Y'all know what time it is. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. My name is James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Saturday evening. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead and subscribe there. Also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you guys can find me there on Sundays and Thursdays. If you guys have not have already, you guys can also subscribe to my Substack. Yes, I am also on Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. So you guys are aware of whenever I upload clips or go live or write any articles, so you guys can get email notifications there as well. If you guys have not already, please make sure to give a like for the stream. And I do apologize for my tardiness a little bit, but things have been a little bit hairy today. I had a very busy day today. So, but it's so good to see all of you here nonetheless. So thank you so very much for liking, sharing, and subscribing for the deliciousness. So thank you very much for that. As you guys have noticed, what are we going to be talking about today? This is going to be a special stream that we're going to be discussing today, because a lot of times, a lot of people do not think about taking identity as well as our material conditions and squaring that circle. So that's what we're going to be doing here today. This is what we're talking about. So we're going to be talking about LGBTQ issues and how we square the circle with housing, healthcare, education, peace, workers' rights, immigration, and more for whatever my guests want to, as far as this subject is concerned. So everybody that's watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, good to see all of you here today. I want to introduce two of my guests that are joining me. We have from Strive, Pensacola, we have Indigo joining me, as well as Red Light China. John is also joining me today. So good to see all of you here joining me, Indigo and John.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for having me too. Yeah.
So good to see you both. So as far as you guys all know that my pronouns are he, him, and it's good to see you, Indigo. I know you are part of Strive, Pensacola. If you can give that as well as your pronouns as well for the audience, so that they know exactly who you are.
Okay. Can y'all hear me? We're good. Okay.
Yes, we can.
I had audio issues for some reason earlier, but anyway, my name is Indigo Lett. I am the social media coordinator and I used to be social media coordinator, secretary, but just social media coordinator now of Strive, which is Socialist Trans Initiative. We are a trans activist organization here in the Gulf Coast. So what that means is we actively fight for trans rights and queer rights here in the Gulf Coast, from pretty much, if we can, all from Louisiana all the way through to Tallahassee. We try to connect that whole reach. If anybody needs any help in those regards, we have connections in different areas. But our main area is the Pensacola area. So what we do is, we're not a 501c3. We take money from donations from the people, and those donations go to, like what we talked about, housing, healthcare. If anybody needs any money for like HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy, clothes, transportation, we try to help out with that as as much as we can. We do different events like benefits. We also try to do like different demonstrations and like protests and things like that. Also, I've now joined the Multinational Communist Party as well, which is another organization. I just joined it like about a month ago, and we're doing theory readings every Sunday, and I'm learning a little bit here and there, So we've done the Black Panther Party 10 points. We've done a little bit about Mao. We've done a little Lenin as well. So I'm learning on that regard as well. So, but that's me. Yeah.
Nice. John?
Yeah, my name is John. I have a TikTok channel at Red Light China where I do what I like to call political education, a little bit of history. As you can see, the name is Red Light China, so it kind of started off as me just debunking some misinformation about China and bringing people some information about China that they might not otherwise have. And from there, it kind of spun out into me just doing, general Marxist education type stuff on there. My pronouns are he, they also.
Gotcha. So thank you so very much for joining. I have a few questions that I wanted to get to. One of the reasons being is because a lot of times we hear the words, well, that's identity politics. When we talk about squaring that circle between those of us who may have a different either gender identity or sexual orientation or both, right? If you guys can talk about that, you know, should there be a division? Should there be a gulf between talking about our identity? Is it just like, should it always remain separate, or should it come together to inform and when it comes to our material conditions? What say you? And I want to start off with you, Indigo.
Okay. You think it would, a lot of people kind of split us apart, split the two sides, especially when it comes to cultural issues or what they perceive to be cultural issues and also economic issues. But, being Black, trans, and neurodivergent, it combines together because the way that our society has, and the word is intersectionality. I know that word has been kind of, done in, but it's true. Like it's what it is. It interconnects not only your quote unquote identities, but it also interconnects you as a working class person, and it connects you if you're homeless. It connects you to getting jobs and access to work. It and healthcare and how you treat it there. And so when we talk about these issues, and when you try to, people in both sides, I would say both parties, to try to split those two. Me and JB, we live in Florida, and that has been a huge, kind of conversational piece where they try to divide both both the identity and and economics together, instead of understanding that if we connect both of our, trying to explain it right, but like if we just basically connect who we are as, marginalized people, but also connect that to the working class, which are usually just inseparable. There always are, because a lot of us work in hotel jobs, a lot of us work minimum wage work, and who we are is connected to what we work. And so that just needs to be, understood. So,
John?
I think it's interesting, JB, because you brought up squaring the circle, right, as a concept of how we fit these two things together. I think that the division from them or between them is largely an created one, a false one, because we talk about on the left issues like homelessness and food insecurity and lack of healthcare or access to healthcare and stuff like that. And if you look at the data, you will see that a lot of queer folk and also a lot of Black folk do disproportionately suffer from these issues as well. So it's really, it's almost I guess not incidental, but there's no contradiction between the two things, because when you fight for things like universal access to healthcare and universal access to housing and stuff, you are advocating for a position that will disproportionately help queer people. So that's how I view it, as not really being in contradiction to begin with.
Okay, so thank you so very much for that. So one of my first questions I wanted to ask was, what do you say to people who lament that we have to vote for Democrats because of all the anti-LGBTQ bills being passed in states? What say you? And I'll start off with you, Indigo, on that one.
Wait, ask it again.
What do you say to people who lament that we have to vote for the Democrats because of all the anti-LGBTQ bills being passed in states?
Ooh, that's a tough one, because on the one hand, because in Florida, Because on the one hand, we have DeSantis. So like, you know, it's one of those things where understandably we live in a state where it's just been since I pretty much since he's been in, but definitely during the pandemic era, like he's been running roughshod over anybody who kids and parents and teachers and um, anything that had to do with the LGBTQ plus community, but also Black and brown as well. Like there's a bunch of, I mean, I live in the county where they banned the book on gay penguins. So, you know, so, and they've also, I forgot. Penguins. Yeah, no, they've also banned the dictionary here as well. I forgot about that. They just did that. Yeah, the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is it because they added trans or something to it?
Yeah, they added. I think it was because they added trans, and there's some other terms in there. And I'm just like, so my county is Escambia County, so we're like the furthest west county in Florida. So it's one of those things where like, I want to say ballot initiatives is probably the best way to go. Like we can get through that and that route, but like the Democratic Party here is just as bad as the national one. They're not really, you know, it's lamenting like to try to figure out like how we're gonna vote for these people. Like, and it's just like we have to just do it ourselves basically. And what we can't do, we go to them because it's just like they haven't really been fighting for us the entire time either. There've been one or two maybe that's come through, but like other than that, it's just not saying it's never hopeless, but I'm and we always gonna fight. But to rely on the Democratic Party here in this state, it's no. So,
what about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, just as kind of this issue of just the crisis being faced by a lot of queer folk at the moment, looking at it sort of as a microcosm of the collapse of capitalism in general, you sort of come to understand that these forms of bigotry in all its forms do tend to be intensified when things are not going well, right? It's being completely exacerbated by the fact that our conditions as a society are getting worse and worse, and people are lashing out against things and people they don't understand. Obviously, that's not to excuse it. It's just trying to get to the root of the issue and understand really the evils of capitalism that are behind this whole thing. So when I look at it that way, I see that the Democrats and Republicans alike are both equally to blame for those conditions, for just everyone's lives getting worse. And so for me, it's, don't treat the symptoms, treat the disease. The disease is capitalism. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. So how do we coalesce the workers into having solidarity with us despite our identity? I know that's a really big question. Yeah. And I would like for you guys to try to give us like a 30,000 feet from what so far, and what you do so far as how we can do that. Indigo.
I think it starts off with political education. It just starts off with helping them to understand that they are being screwed over by the system. Or in a lot of cases, what we're talked about in the multinational Communist Party is talking to them and understanding that, like, why is the working conditions in your at your job terrible? Why is your boss treating this way? Why are you getting underpaid? And start off with those basic needs that they need, and then link that to, well, your fellow workers who are of different marginalizations are going through the same thing you are. They're not, they're just because they're trans or just because they're gay doesn't mean they're not also facing homelessness. They're not also facing educational issues. They're not also facing violence. Like, we also talk about that a lot. And so when you try to connect those things together, that hopefully help them realize that, like, wow, I may have issues or I may have some prejudices towards, gay or trans people, but if they're going through the same thing I'm going through, then we can try to understand each other better as we're organizing towards either striking or unionizing or, protesting out in the streets.
Mm-hmm. John, what say you regarding that?
Well, I agree with everything that Indigo said, first of all, but I guess maybe a smaller scale thing I'll just say is that I do this in my workplace, but just you gotta, whatever your gender identity is, be that like man up, be a boss bitch, whatever you gotta do, and call it out when you see it in your workplace. I mean, if you have a job and you go to work every day, like don't let that shit slip, because I have had a couple coworkers who have said transphobic things, and it was because they didn't understand it. Not again to excuse anything, but I sternly explained it to them, and both of them now are much more respectful of people's pronouns and identities and stuff. So I know that there's a lot of times where that can backfire and it can be scary, especially if you have like social anxiety or something like I do. It can be hard, but I think it's also, it's part of it. So
yeah. A lot of people. Can I?
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of people in the workplace, they don't. Yeah, like John is saying, they don't know, or they just get from what they get from sometimes right wing places or even liberal places. They get this kind of very like skewed version of the queer trans community, and so when they talk to them, they're at work talking about it. They only come at it from this very this kind of unintelligent angle, and so hopefully people who are around them who are cis or straight, who understand more about the issues, can say, hey, look, that's not the right word to say, this person goes by this pronouns, and that also helps when organizing, because now you're more together, because now you're understanding of each other a bit better. So it just helps in that regard as well.
Because there's one thing I think about is that there's some people who, and between Indigo, you and I, there's certain circles where we have to be very careful because of the color of our skin, right? And there's certain circles that we just are like, yeah, we're not going there. And so there's this caution that also comes because we don't want to place ourselves in danger. And so I think it's also comes with that, because there may be some people who may not understand. It's like, well, why don't you just put it out there to correct people? And it's a bit of a risk from time to time, and I don't think some people realize that. And that's due to, because a lot of times when people talk about homophobia, transphobia, things like this, right? To me, I see it as a tool that's used to keep the division in place. But that division that is used is also extremely dangerous for us, because even if we try to correct something, then it could backfire on us, because there may be somebody that is homophobic or transphobic or whatever, and it could be harmful to us. So, what I say to anybody in the audience is, use your powers of discernment when it comes to things like this, because it can be, sometimes we can risk ourselves in that way too. So we have to, discern what is safe for us and what is not as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to add, is just, use your best judgment. Don't get yourself in danger. Don't get yourself hurt. That's definitely not what I'm trying to say. But, if you do feel comfortable and if it is a reasonable thing to do, then by all means,
Yeah.
Yeah, because some people are still like not out, and I understand that point too. Like,
for sure.
There's working, you're not out, and you're in this like precarious situation. I'm not talking about those people, the people who are like out. What I'm saying? The people who are like, I'm boss bitch, I'm me, like that. Yeah. Like, if you're like that, then like, yeah, go for it. But if you're like young, you're just starting the workplace, or you're just coming out, I understand. Like, hey, take, fight your battles, fight, pick your battles on this today. Yeah.
And I think panels like this are important, especially for anybody that's cisgender and straight. because how often are you going to be able to have people like us all talking about this from a material leftist perspective? And I think this is one of the reasons why I wanted to also have this, is because even if you are straight, even if you are cisgender, I want you to be able to hear this conversation as well, because I want to normalize people knowing we're not that much different from them. And please feel free to interrupt me at any time. But that's one of the things that I would like for people to know, is that there's a ton of overlap between us and that coal miner in Appalachia. There's a ton of overlap there. So one of my questions that I also wanted to get into, and without getting too deeply into your personal life, but I wanted to ask, what are some of your biggest concerns materially? And by materially, I mean just at the categories: housing, healthcare, education, foreign policy, and so on and so forth. I'm going to start off with you, John, first. We're going to go in reverse. What is your biggest concern?
For me personally, it's got to be housing. Rent just keeps going up, and I mean housing and just cost of living in general. It's like food's more expensive, housing is more expensive, everything is getting more expensive, and it's just becoming hard to live, hard to exist. And then, of course, you add on all the other costs associated with life, and it becomes unbearable. I mean, and this is my experience and my life, but that's, like I said, I think a lot of these issues we're facing are reflective of issues that people all throughout society are facing. So that's basically my answer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much would say the same thing. I mean, healthcare wise, I'm lucky. I work as a librarian, so I get county healthcare and stuff like that. But I'm trying to move out, and me and my friends are looking for places, and even in small Pensacola, prices have gone up. We're all trying to balance our budgets, to make sure we can get out, to move out and stuff. But we're asking people, hey, do you know a place? Do you know a place that's cheap? Do you know a place and it's just really difficult to find anywhere to live. So I think that's one of the biggest issues right now. Housing wise, downtown Pensacola is definitely getting gentrified. I mean, it's already been gentrified, but it's creeping out to the midtown now and stuff. And it's just, I don't know what else. It's up in the air. You try to live where you work, you try to, and stuff like that, or live near it. But I have a friend who is, they're disabled and they work at a Starbucks, and they want to move around because the mall where they work at is near. They want to live where we're right there, so they don't have to. So I don't have to drive them or something like that as much. They can take the bus or whatever. Prices around the mall, insane. So it is a big issue, housing, for right now, definitely.
For me, one of the biggest issues is housing as well. And there's also different variables that people don't think about. So let's say hypothetically you are trans, but at the same time you're in the beginning phases of your trying to transition, right? And you're trying to rent a home or you're trying to buy a home, right? Somebody could still discriminate against you. So you have to be careful, not only that, but also where you live as well, right? So there's that variable there as well, when it comes to things like that, that some people just don't think about, that they don't feel like, oh, well, this wouldn't be a challenge for me. And that can also prove to be a challenge for some of our siblings that are, maybe have different gender identities, things like that. So I think that's something that, it's a variable that I think it's like when you're part of a marginalized community, it's like, yes, you have the aspect where it hits you economically, but then on top of it, it's also compounded with that other difficulty as well, socially as well too.
This is a secondhand thing, but I do have a friend who recently had top surgery, and it definitely caused some issues for him, because if you don't have some PTO banked up or whatever, that's the kind of stuff that puts you on your ass for a while. And long term, if you're going to be tired, you're going to be wiped out because you're not going to be sleeping as well, especially if you usually sleep on your stomach like he did, like it's something that can really mess with you. And the fact that you have to deal with like all your bills and everything on top of not working, just, it compounds everything.
Well, can we talk about that? Because one of the things that a lot of times people don't consider, and this is one of my biggest gripes, is that when it comes to people talking about, like, okay, I hate to do this, but I'm gonna go off on liberals. Okay?
Go do that. Yeah, please.
Look, they will scream at the top of their lungs, "Oh my God, we support LGBTQ people. Love is love," until we want universal healthcare, until we want a nationalized healthcare system. Because the thing is like, but then they're like, "Oh, we want choice," and yet you got trans people out here who want gender affirming care, who may want to get the top surgery, who may want to get the bottom surgery, but then they have to go on GoFundMe, Give Butter, or Give Send Go just to raise money in order to be able to do that. Meanwhile, you can go down to Havana in Cuba and you can get gender affirming care for free, because they actually had a revolution. And so when people talk about, well, we care about trans people, it's like, then what are you doing for universal health care? How are you, like for instance, AOC, Mark Pelkan, Pramila Jayapal, if you guys actually care about those of us who are LGBTQ, then why in the world are we have to pay out the ass just for our HIV meds? Why are we have to pay out the ass just for some PrEP? Why are we have to pay out the ass just to get for our trans siblings to get the gender affirming care that they need? If you really care about them, then why aren't you trying to make the system better for them? Because guess what? They're workers too, and they're working poor, but yet you say you support them, but I don't see it. I don't see where the rubber meets the road. You know what I'm saying? Please help me to explain that a little bit to them, because that's what gets on my nerves.
Yeah. And that's why it's hard for me with these Florida Democrats, because I'm sitting there thinking, you could revolutionize and say, hey, we're going to provide these things for you to get us to vote for you. You know what I'm saying? But you're not going to do that. You're going to either go back to the status quo pre DeSantis, which was terrible anyway. You know, it was a little bit better, but like it was still terrible, because like a lot of we still didn't get, like you're saying, we still didn't get the healthcare we needed, the PrEP. And HRT, there was still people who had to go to therapy before they got HRT, so they still had to pay like 3 or 4 months of therapy, which depending on which therapist you go to, hopefully they got a sliding scale for your ass. They have a sliding scale for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully they got a sliding scale for you, because if they don't, you're going to be screwed. You're going to be paying $200 to $300 for that, then go to the HRT, and then that sometimes costs a lot. Depending on if you're transitioning female to male or male to female, or just non-binary like I am, and you're just transitioning whichever way, So it's this struggle of like, we're trying to fight for our liberation and everything, but then these Democrats come along, oh, we're gonna do this for you, we're here for you every June, we're here, we're gonna march with you, or we're gonna go to to the Pride March or whatever, and then after July hits and they're like, peace out, because like they literally don't care. They literally don't care. All the corporations, they don't care. And so it's just upsetting, because like a lot of us, like you're saying, a lot of us are working class. A lot of people don't have I'm lucky I got PTO, but like there's tons of queer and trans people, even just straight and cis people, don't have PTO. Even if they want to have a baby, for example, you don't want to have a baby, no matter who you are, you don't have the paid time off. I used to work at Hampton Inn, which is a hotel chain of Hilton or whatever. And there were so many of the housekeepers I knew who would have a baby, and then they'd come back like in a month. And I'm like, yo, there are European countries where, and Europe's got their own issues, especially with imperialism. I'm not gonna, we're not, but aside that, they they at least have like 6-7 months of maternity leave for them. Like I had a friend in Belgium, they're like 8, 9, something like that, sometimes a year for some of them. And both parents, not just the mother, both parents get off and they take care of their kid, which is precious time that be around your child, instead of being like, here, grandma, I got to go to work, or here, auntie, or whomever, I got to, and obviously childcare, with that too. Childcare, child daycare costs out the wazoo. It is ridiculous for daycare. I mean, I feel so bad for parents. So, and that goes across the board as well, because there's queer parents and there's, straight parents. And so it's upsetting to look at that. So when we talk about these issues, it just goes across the board, and that's, linking, like you said, the square in a circle. So.
Yep, absolutely. And then on top of it, there's the healthcare, there's the public safety aspect. How many people who are trans, especially, Black trans women, that get harassed by police. And so when we talk about defund the police, it's not just for those of us who are Black. It is also, who sparked the violence in Stonewall?
Exactly. Exactly.
So when people talk about, defund police is just a Black issue, baby, no. And here's my thing: if you're queer and if you are a liberal and you're sitting there talking about you're cheering for the police squad car in rainbow colors, you're literally going against your roots. It's like what? Like what did they throw a brick for years ago?
Exactly.
It's wild, man. So and that's the thing, is like, and then that goes into that, we all know the police actually do not have a constitutional duty to protect us, including people like us. They don't. And so this is why it also behooves us, to really fight for the liberation, especially as far as workers. So man, don't get me started. I'm gonna have y'all here all night. I'm gonna have to buy some pizza.
Got be going.
Just go on my phone and order right now.
Just make sure it's not Domino's or Pizza Hut, because
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
The Zionists, you know what I'm saying?
That's right. I forgot.
I didn't know about Domino's.
I don't know if it's Domino's. I know it's Pizza Hut, so it's not. Stay away from the Hut.
Yeah.
But yeah. So another one of my questions I also wanted to get into, because we talked about the healthcare aspect, but another thing is the housing aspect, and I just wanted to share this as well, because I think a lot of times people don't think about this, is that housing is actually a very big issue for those of us who are LGBTQ. And so it says the LGBT youth are 120% more likely to face homelessness than their peers, while Black youth are 83%, and Latina youth are 33% more likely. So with that being said, I personally am a advocate for housing for all. I think we all are, for the most part, right? And with that being said, just think of, if you have a young person that comes out of the closet for whatever identity they hold, right? We don't want them to be out there on the streets, subject to the elements, subject to, getting sick, subject to danger. And so this is another reason why having a universal housing system would also be beneficial to people who are like us. Because let's be real, there's some parents, some family members, they still just will not accept. And it's like, well, instead of trying to fight for them to accept, it's like, all right, fine. If you don't want to accept, you don't want to have to accept. But this person is still going to be safe despite whether you accept them or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a case of that intersectionality we were talking about earlier. Because, yeah, I mean, that's it. I really do feel for the people younger than us who are coming up right now, because it's such a bad time to be a kid in general. But being a gay or trans or lesbian kid is like, I can't, like, I mean, it wasn't, great for us, but like now I can only imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, like John was saying, I just, because I mean, we grew up on, like, unfortunately, there was movies and like TV shows like what's his name, Jerry Springer and Maury and stuff like that, and we get the bad, like you get those shows and stuff like that, and people's like thought processes on like queer and trans people back then, but like now, it's so like scrutinized. Obviously in our state is like the most, but us and some other southern states and midwestern states are some of the worst at it, but yeah, these kids, like with the Don't Say Gay bill that got passed in 2021, it just affected K through fifth at first, but then, and we were telling people like they're going to move it up to like the middle school, high school, but they didn't listen, and then literally they moved to and even teachers who maybe want to, just, hey, I have a partner who is a man or woman or whomever. They can't even tell the kids that, like, hey, this picture of me and this spouse here, this is, this is what, and, helping people to educate people on these topics in schools and then just in other areas to like have these kids have a different perspective of life when they get older. So they'll be, in a better, they'll just be better mentally, so they can help out in different areas with the working class and stuff like that. So they'll be better like to combat, transphobia and homophobia and these issues. So yeah, I just always feel so bad for these kids, like getting access to these healthcare and anything like that.
Yeah. And while you guys are talking about that, you just reminded me of the education aspect. I don't know about you both. I personally don't have student loans because I never went to college. But those of y'all that have student loans, look, it goes across the board in identities here. So for those of you guys, I don't know if you guys have student loans, but people are hurting out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, student loans is anti-discriminatory. they don't care. They will come after you. But yeah, and so that's also another aspect. So like if you're trying to come out or if you're trying to get surgeries and stuff like that, and you have all these other bills on top of student loan debt, which can't be bankrupted, like you bankrupt your way out of that, because Joe Biden did that back in 2004, if I'm not mistaken, part of the bankruptcy bill. Like, so, he really, it just really is another issue that, having student loan debt, like a lot of people went to college and got degrees, and some of them have jobs, some of them don't, in their field of specialty, and it's just something like, just wipe away the debt. Like a lot of us are struggling out here, a lot of us are trying to like gain housing and stuff like that, and that's holding people back financially from buying a car or buying or getting paying for rent or all those sorts of healthcare issues that they want to address. So yeah, it's just another issue that gets in the way.
As far as education goes, I think, like I was saying earlier, like everything's getting worse, and there's like I've been reading about this recently a little bit. There is an actual like education crisis in this country where kids' attention spans are lower than they've ever been. Their computer literacy is actually less than it was 10 years ago because they're always on tablets and phones. So they don't actually know how to use computers or do research on a computer or anything like that we used to, for the most part, learn in school. So yeah, again, this is like kind of a national issue that is just being intensified in our like most marginalized communities.
Yeah. I think it might have been because I was seeing like Gen Z was catching that. Like it was Gen Z was catching the issue of like the lack of education on that issue. I think it was like COVID really did it. Like I think COVID really like the not being able to come into the school and just being online all the time. And some kids maybe thrive through it, but like some other kids, I'm sure having the one-on-one or at least the time where I can go to the teacher and ask the question and stuff like that, not having that access in school during, in real time, I think maybe affected a lot of the students. And you're at home, like it's hard enough for college students. We have all the distractions and stuff at home to do your online stuff. I'm sure if you're like 10 years old and you got a PlayStation 5 right there, you're like, yeah, so 1 + 1, yeah. Camera did okay, there we go. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah. That's also very true. So as far as the other ones that I wanted to talk about, workers' rights is also a really big thing, especially among those of us. And so when it comes to workers' rights and banding together, because ultimately, I think it's safe to say that the three of us, at least, believe that workers should own the means of production. And where the means of production, it could be the shop, it could be the restaurant, it could be the bar, it could be the store, it could be, whatever it is, basically. And with that being said, is I think that like you both said, so well, was that we should, having that education, realizing that there's more that unites us. Unfortunately, there, because of the powers that be that wish to see a division among us, some people, they just don't see past that. And so it's like, what's the, how do we, because there's a lot of people out there who just feel like our identity would be a barrier to uniting, right? It's like, where do we go, or how do we get ourselves to a point where we can get them to see past it, and not almost like a I don't see you know what I mean, not like a I don't see color, but it's like I see it, but it doesn't matter to me in that way. It's like, I just want to unite with you as a worker, it's just, it feels like if we try to come together in that way, I don't know, it feels like things just have to get so bad to the point where it's just like, never mind that. Does it sound weird for me to say that?
I mean, it's not weird. I think it's definitely a response that a lot of people have because it seems so unattainable at the moment, right? Like, we've never been this divided on this particular issue, and it can seem like, I don't know, there's a couple things. Like, the first thing is that it always feels like you're living through the end of the world, right? Like, we feel like that right now. People felt like that 30 years ago and 30 years before that. And, these things keep happening and the world keeps going on. But then the other thing is that, things always feel eternal when they're not, right? Like, because it's like this right now, we feel like it's going to always be like this. And that's not necessarily the case, but it's also not necessarily the case, right? Like, things will only change if people change them. I mean, that's typically how the world works. And as far as how we do that, how we bridge that gap, I mean, I hate to like always come back to it, but I just think it's like, it really comes down to the means of production thing that you were talking about, where it's like, like, as long as this state, as long as this mode of production, as long as this economy is designed around keeping the people down and separating them, alienating them from the means of production and from civil society and all that stuff, as long as that's the case, stuff like this is going to exist, you know, and maybe it will always exist, but it's only going to keep getting worse until we do something about like the basically from the bottom up, like how our entire society is organized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. To go along with John, I think that it can get bleak. It feels like, when we talk about racism, it kind of, or just racism in general, like it feels the same thing. It's like every decade, it feels like, another unarmed person gets shot and killed. And then like people have to like re-educate themselves on like, oh, well, this is what happens when the police do this. And then each generation, I mean, you had, Rodney King back in the day, and then you have, George Floyd now. And it feels like with each generation, we had to re-educate people on queer and transness but now I think, I feel like they know that if we unite, we're going to seize the means of production. We're going to take back the power. And so they're trying so hard in the States and obviously in the nation to like split us apart and keep us from working together. And I think it's just going to have to be a bottom up approach between worker to worker and person to person to like understand each other. And sometimes you gotta put yourself out there. Like I said, we said obviously fight your battles, but sometimes it takes a person to go like, listen, I'm this is who I am. You've been working with me for 3 years now. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we're going to work together on this. I do not care if you think bad about me. We have bigger fish to fry. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like our boss is screwing us over on these particular issues. And we need to put up a list of demands that say, this is what we want for our job to continue to work this job. And so, it just starts there. And it's really hard to understand, especially for the younger queer and trans crowd who are just entering the workforce or just getting into higher education or just getting to wherever, to try to breach that notion. But I think it takes it takes a bit of bravery to go through and go like, listen, we're gonna fight and we're gonna do this, because I just at a certain point, I think I think you were right. I think at a certain point it gets so bad that even the most liberal, okay, we gotta do something, right? We thought we were gonna see that with Trump coming in, but obviously no. But yeah, that was a funny one because I was like, y'all are not gonna do anything, and then they didn't. Mm-hmm. But I was sitting back like I was like, really no. But
they made a lot of tweets about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of tweets. There's a lot of candidates that people were following, Mm-hmm. A lot of people who may run an election in 2020 were talking some big talk, and they thought we were going to do something. But yeah, it just, I think also too, this may play a little bit into it is the media as well. If there is better representation in some places, maybe that will help. Obviously that is a different discussion in a sense, because it's like, if you do see different trans and queer people in like movies and things like that, that may help them to realize like, oh wow, okay, we're not, the queer and trans community aren't so we're alike. If stories are made that are, but it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to have a working class story about queer and trans people going to that military industrial breakthrough and try to see if you're going to make something like that, go through the Hollywood producers and everything. But if you can make an indie film or TV show or something like that, that breaks through and helps people in that regard.
But Indigo, here's the thing though. It's like, are you saying that we just need to be more woke?
Oh my God, that word. Oh my God. Somebody made a stop woke act. Sorry, I'm going.
So one of my things though is like, okay, so I'm gonna go on another rant here. I'm sorry. But
no, it's okay.
The rich gays.
Oh my god.
The Pete Buttigieg's.
The Pete Buttigieg's. The Tim. I'm sorry, but to anybody, okay, all y'all who are straight, if you got somebody who's queer in your life, bring them to the screen. Bring them to the screen. All y'all that are queer, come here. Come close. Let me tell you something. All right? Rainbow capitalism will not save us. It has not saved us before. It will not save us now. So if you're sitting there looking at people like Tim Cook and going, oh my God, he's running Apple and it's going to be the first $1 trillion company run by a gay man. Guess what? Chicken butt. It's not going to help us, number one. Number two, let's talk about the people who are queer that are Congolese that are being used as slave labor in order to manufacture the cobalt and coltan that are in these countries that are literally in our electronic devices, which I just dropped just now on the floor, but it's whatever. You know, and my thing is like, we're sitting here because they will talk about, oh my God, look at these people, they're queer. And I'm like, what good is it? Like, I don't care if look, if a drone operator is queer, they're bombing little brown kids on the other side of the planet. Why is that? How is that a victory? That's not a victory at all. And the thing is that they will use what our identities in order to make it seem like it's progress. And that's what gets on my nerves, right? And then on top of it, and I think somebody was talking about this a couple weeks back. They said that those of us who are queer, we're actually underrepresented as being poor in lower class, in poor class, right? How many poor gay people do y'all know?
All of my gay friends are poor.
Yeah, there's a lot. I was about to say, it's like, I can't think of. There may be some that are like quote unquote middle class, but the majority of them are poor. Yeah, they're working class.
We all broke.
Yeah.
Broke. Look, I'm telling you right now, my ass is broke. And the thing is, like, people, and this is one of the things that gets on my nerves, is that people automatically have this thought in their head that those of us who are queer tend to be in the upper echelons of society, when in reality, no, we just as broke as you. Like, don't let it fool you. And the thing is that that's what the I guess the media sphere, because when we talk about corporate media, I'm not just talking about the corporate media as far as the news. I'm also talking about the way we're represented it too.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're never shown as being just regular working class. Like, for instance, you know, there may be some of us that may be carpenters. Some of us probably work on the oil rig. Your homeboy that's probably working with you on the oil rig may be queer. You just don't know it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's my thing. Like, I think that part of that is we are underrepresented, and I think that's part of that is part of the propaganda that's being pushed within our media. If you guys want to speak to that too as well.
Well, I mean, I always try to apply a little bit of a Marxist lens, and you know, there's this characteristic of capitalism where it never really destroys anything, even though it might seem like it. What it really does is it sort of rolls. It's like a lint roller. Like, it rolls over it and it picks it up and it sort of assimilates it into itself. And so it makes sense that since we have a proletarian liberation movement of queer and trans folks, that there's also going to be a ruling class, a bourgeois like counterpart to that. So I think that's what we're seeing really kick into full gear right now in the United States, is a literal like ruling class LGBTQIA plus movement where it wants to be the movement, and it doesn't want us to actually have a voice, right?
The gay mafia.
Yeah, the gay mafia. but yeah, like what John was saying. Yeah, because when we see it every time. Like, there'll be even leftists who will jump on us like jump on the queer and trans community during June because they're like, oh, this is a capitalist action that all these companies are coming through. Like Lockheed Martin had their huge thing, their huge banner out there, and one protest, I think it was in New York or whatever, and Target and all the rest of them. And it's just like, no, that's them doing that. Like, there's people, I know somebody who works at Target who is trans. That's what I'm saying. There are working class people at these places, but they're, like you're saying, they're underrepresented, and they're not and we talk, and another thing we get attacked on is like, when people, let's say for example, we talk about what's happening with Gaza, is like they'll immediately attack us about like, well, why are you supporting them? Because they'll kill you if they, if you was over there. Like, I was like, brother, there are queer and trans people in Gaza who are getting bombed by Israelis who are using our money to, kill. So I'm like, what? I was like, it makes no sense. And that's why I was saying intersectionality, even though, like I said, intersectionality is very important, because you can intersect, hey, these people in Gaza, there are people who are queer and trans in Gaza who are struggling to eat just anything right now, obviously, because of the situation. And so it's just really ugly how people just treat these situations.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because there is nothing that I have less patience for than people using queer identities to justify any form of, imperialism in general, not to mention things like, genocide or whatever. Like, that's just totally unacceptable. Totally just fed behavior. I'm sorry. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, that was a great segue into my question. And I also have a video that I want to share, but I would like to formally ask the question: what do you say to people who comment that we would be violated by the people in Gaza, even though we're in solidarity with them for their liberation?
I would say that me being against like genocidal activities like the ones that Israel is carrying out is not dependent on anything, really. These people could all stand in a line and kick my dog one at a time, and I would still not advocate for them to be genocided. So it's kind of where I stand on it.
Yeah. Okay. We're being violated over here. So like, I got no time. Like, I really don't. Like, and there are always going to be bigoted people in every country. I'm not going to, we're not going to sugarcoat that. But like, at the same time, there are people who protect those people, not the bigoted people, but people who protect the queer and trans community. There's always people in those societies who, will still love their child, who will still love, their fellow, person, no matter what they identify as. And so to blanket that all Palestinians would do that to you, to blanket it the entire the Palestinian community that would do that to you if you were over there, is just ugly, because people think, oh no, Israel, they don't have gay rights either. They don't have a comprehensive, thing for queer and trans people over there either. So it's just like, it's projection. It's big projection. And it's just like, you're from America and from Israel. So like, it's just ugly to try to it's ugly to try to make an argument for, if you were over there, they would treat you a certain way, as an argument to you trying to combat a full-on genocide that's happening over there. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, let me share this with you guys as well. I shared this on Twitter. You guys have probably seen this on TikTok, but it's actually really great. So it says, go to Gaza and they'll chop your head off for being gay. Some LGBTQ people tested out that theory. Let's observe their findings, shall we? And I shared this as well. You guys probably saw this on TikTok, but let's take a look for good measure.
Shouldn't be supporting Palestinians if you're LGBTQ. Seriously, they'll murder you. Don't believe me? Go there. See how they treat you. Okay, then let's go. Mission: gather and label supplies, assemble a team, arrive and distribute aid to as many Palestinian families as possible while serving as openly LGBTQ. Here's how it went. But Rain, you're an outsider, so of course it was different for you. Well, that wasn't what y'all claimed. You said Palestinians have murdered me. But here, in case you aren't satisfied, our team was largely made up of local LGBTQ plus people and their allies, and they all survived. Oh, and if that's still not good enough because they were providing aid, we found Gaza and Palestinian LGBTQ people at this stop, this one, and many more. They all have grown up to adulthood while living within Gaza, Palestine. This rumor is a vicious bit of propaganda meant to dehumanize the victims of one of the deadliest months of bombardment to any territory on this planet in decades, and it's a lie. Now, do LGBTQ people in Gaza, Palestine still need liberation? Yes. Do they have their full rights? No. Is it safe for them to be super open? Most of the times, no. But their struggle isn't unique to Palestinian culture. It's a struggle shared by most LGBTQ people on the planet in different but very adjacent ways. I've experienced similar treatment in Ukraine, Poland, the USA, Colombia, Mexico, Turkey, and more. LGBTQ plus liberation is a lifetime fight, one we're not unfamiliar with, but let me be clear. Regardless of the progress of that fight, this is never an excuse to turn our backs on the suffering and liberation of others. Gaza and Palestinian LGBTQ plus people and their allies will continue to push for their rights over time, but right now the priority is to push to have a life at all, a home at all, a land at all. Our focus should be on that call for humanitarian aid to every beating heart.
I had not seen that. That is,
Yeah, me either. I hadn't
really
seen that.
cool.
That was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that honestly, a lot of times the pink washing gets on my nerves because a lot of times people will look and say, well, they would harm you, and then they'll insert like because they're Muslim. By the way, number one, gay Muslims do exist.
Mhm.
Number one. Number two, if you think that just because somebody of a particular religion would hate those of us who are LGBTQ, okay, I have 2 words. Yeah, 2 words. No, 3 words. Westboro Baptist Church. Go ahead, look it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot of these people who call themselves Christian, and by the way, I'm a former Christian, a lot of them would hang me just for that too. And yet I don't see people going, oh my God, look at all these Christians, right? Because the thing is that ultimately it's about, and the thing is like being against genocide so that they can get themselves to a point where they're more accepting. But it's kind of hard to do when you're constantly being bombed day in and day out, you know? Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't help.
Yeah. It's hard to have a life, when you're constantly being bombarded, I mean, like, bombed. And so it's just a struggle. I forgot her name that's on TikTok, but she keeps on giving constant updates about what's happening. I can't remember her name. She's like not popular, but she's a Palestinian reporter, and you just see it every day, and it's just like, how they're so strong for people. And so amazing, and then just to think that like all of them are just transphobic, and all of them are using that as an argument. Just I think her name's Basan or something like that. Basan, something like that. I can't remember, but yeah, she is amazing, and then they're just amazing people. So I just wish the best for them.
Yeah. Dwayne says it's okay to hate Putin's homophobia, but not if that makes you embrace the CIA and Nazis. Well,
Facts.
Of course, but I think that's one of the things that they try to do is that they try to get us to embrace the genocide because they feel like, oh, well, that, if we want our liberation, it has to come at the cost of the lives of other people. And we say, no, it's not going to come at the cost of lives of other people, because ultimately it's about their liberation too as a people. And yeah, I mean, I've heard queer Palestinians that they exist. I've heard of queer Palestinians that are open. And guess what? There's people who know. I am willing to bet, and some people may look at me weird for this, but I'm willing to bet that some members of the Palestinian resistance are queer.
Oh yeah.
And now what? Like, but I don't see them getting killed. But and yet Israel will blackmail queer Palestinians into speaking against their own people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so,
it's definitely like a case of projection, right? Because the greater threat to, you know, queer and whatever people living in Palestine is not Palestinians. It's, as always, it's the Israelis, just as they are the biggest threat to all Palestinians.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is why I say when it comes to things like Zionism, this is another reason why Zionism is really just a particular type of evil in my eyes. Because look, this is from the Electronic Intifada. It says how Israel blackmails Palestinians into treason. And so this was an interesting article because it basically talks about how what they'll do is they'll take a gay Israeli and they'll use that gay Israeli to entrap the gay Palestinian. And then they will go to the gay Palestinian and say, well, we will out you to them if you don't do what we want. And it's the same thing where, like, if you did that to somebody who's Christian, right, here in the United States, you know, they would be scared too, right? So, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, all Palestinians are anti-LGBTQ. The thing is that there's anti-LGBTQ people from all faiths all over the world, and there's no difference. They're also accepting Palestinians as well. So I think that, you know, we have to get out of this whole thing thinking that the Zionists somehow have this stock on acceptance and progressivism when in reality they don't have it at all.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yes, so I mean that's some of the things that I wanted to discuss as well because I think it's really important. And I also wanted to, you know, maybe we could just touch on the immigration just a little bit. But of course, there are people who are, you know, migrating here because of the foreign policy that's going on, that the United States is doing. You know, some of them may be queer as well, and they may be trying to flee because of the homophobia and transphobia that goes on in the countries that they're in. But they're trying to flee so that they can be safe. But of course, you know, the United States typically favors to put in more right-wing governments that also are dangerous to those who may be LGBTQ plus down in these countries. So they will have to flee to come here as undocumented immigrants, you know, seek as refugees. So that's also another variable as well that a lot of people don't think about. And so this is why I talk about, you know, when it comes to the immigration issue, we have to focus on the foreign policy, right? So that's just another variable I think that a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our country is one that is not friendly to queer and trans folks, and that extends not just in our borders, but to the entire world, essentially. So,
Yeah.
and that responsibility ultimately falls on us, not just us in the sense of this stream, but us in terms of the people of this country to do something about it. And you know, so
Indigo,
we
did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so we have like what are the missionaries and stuff like that that go to these different countries and you know and project the religion on some of these other countries and people. And that in turn, I think we saw, was it a Uganda who like had some of the harshest policies we've ever seen on like queer and trans people, like death. Yeah, so and I think the majority of that country is Christian. So you know, it's you know, obviously the country's at fault, but like when you look at like why that country got to that point, um, it's because of us. It's because of the West, and a lot of times that's what happens with imperialism as well, is where not just the economic side, it's also what they bring in with culture and how we've seen it historically with different queer and trans uh like I'm trying to think of the word for it, but like queer and trans like groups of the past, like the Hijras in India, or the I think it's like Muex or Mue in Mexico, and other different groups that, you know, they were there with the indigenous people and they were respected. Some of them even praised, you know, because they understood both sides. We have two spirit here in America, but when, you know, when Europe came through, they one of the first things they did was kill those people off or push those people to the outskirts of society, and said that we're, you know, marriage is between a man and a woman. This is how we want things done. This is how we want the society to be set up. On top of the fact that we're owning the means of production, you know, on our on our front, and so that wires of people to think a certain way, so that when people do start coming out, or people who have already had been there, they follow the will of what they've been told and what they've been taught by the West, rather than their own learning and teachings that they grew up with. And so, yeah, it's just horrible to see, because once again, it's people needing to come together from all different backgrounds and fight back against, in this case, not impressive. What's the word? Oppressive West. So
yeah. And by the way, while I have y'all here, I'm going to tell this to people, especially to a lot of Black people who may who think otherwise. Homophobia and really transphobia is really a colonial construct, because back in the days, it was actually looked at in a very relaxed way in indigenous cultures, especially here on Turtle Island, as well as in Africa. So when it comes to people talking about, oh my God, you know, they'll think it came from, you know, European colonialism. No, baby. No. It actually, homophobia and transphobia actually came from colonialism. So it's actually time for us to get back to our roots. But anyway, I don't want to get into that too deeply, but that's part of the article that I actually just showed on screen a little bit. But yeah, so that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about as well, because a lot of times people, you know, a lot of Black people will talk about, oh well, you know, it's colonialism that brought in, you know,
yeah, it's a white thing or something.
Yeah, it's a
And
white
I'm like,
thing.
no, it's not a white thing. It's a us thing.
Yeah. You know, yeah. But yeah, so one of the things that I just want to share this really quick before we conclude is I also want to share this as well. When it comes to people talking about socialism, people may look at, you know, some of the sins of different socialist countries, you know, in regards to LGBTQ people, but they have definitely did a reversal, because they realize that we are all workers and we are all just regular people. This article actually talks about Cuba's new family code law that passed in 2022. I'm going to say this: that law that was passed is a beautiful piece of legislation. You know, feel free if you guys want to comment on that, but I think it's a beautiful piece of legislation that actually shows how Cuba is more socially progressive than, I say, 99% of Western countries.
I'd say 99% of countries.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
It's the most progressive thing I've ever seen. Like I've seen in the last, we've seen, because you know, it's just something that, like, we were making the joke of, like, if you, any group of TV or any group of like band together people on TV, like the A-Team or anything, they would be considered a family under under this law. Like any ragtag group of people, like like the polycule that's in your house, or that your friend group that knows, or whatever it is, they would literally be under this law. Like it would fit, under the description. And it is amazing.
Yep, definitely. So I'm going to share this as well, so you guys have a link to read about this as well. Share this, especially with your people who are, if they consider themselves allies, but they will complain about, oh my God, Cuba's a dictatorship. And it's like, okay, here you go. Is how dictatorship is that if you're trans, you can actually get gender affirming care. Oh, and I'll share that too, because people were able to get gender affirming care and gender affirming surgery since the early 2000s in Cuba, and they didn't have to pay any money for it.
It's also worth mentioning too that bill was passed by a democratic referendum. Like as in the people actually drafted it and voted on it, not like Congress or whatever. I mean, could you imagine that in our country? Like the people actually coming up with a thing they wanted to do and then implementing it. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I'll share that in a second. But as far as what you guys are doing further in the future, Indigo, if you can go first, like where can they find you, as well as what's coming up, on your end.
Okay. So you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and on Twitter or X or whatever. Anyway, you can find me on there. All of it under Indigo Let. But for Strive, it's Strive Pensacola on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and on X, Twitter. So what we're trying to figure out, we're organizing to try to figure out what next steps we can do to combat these. There's a lot of anti-trans bills that just are in the season now, or in the state legislature. One of them that's kind of almost through is the one on biological on gender marker on your driver's license. So we're trying to make the argument that the DMV would now have to ask people about their gender before they can put it on a marker and everything, because they have to. Exactly. And how much trouble that would be for the DMV, how much trouble would that be for just straight people to have to be asked that. So like, it's just needless and stupid. Right. So we're thinking about either, protesting. We have like kind of the trifecta of bad people in our county. So we have Alex Andrade, Michelle Bachmann, and then we also have what's his name, Matt Gaetz, who's our state senator. So not the state senator, but he's the House senator. So we have like the trifecta of like terrible people. So we're thinking about either doing protests at their offices and making noise. Some people are thinking about doing like a die-in at the DMV or something like that. We're trying to gather our people in for that, or trying to at least do first I think we're going to try to do like a town hall meeting or something like that, so we can try to educate people on these bills and just on transgender issues and queer issues in general, because right now a lot of people are still not understanding the different genders and sexualities and all that, and how that corresponds to the working class, like we've talked about today. So that's where we are. And then with the Multinational Communist Party, I think they're on Instagram, and there's a website as well that you can go to, and then you can look them up as well. But that's where we're at.
All right. Thank you so very much, Indigo. And John, where can they find you, and what you have coming up soon?
You can find me on TikTok at Red Like China. Again, just political education, history, Marxism, if you're into those things. You can Actually, I was gonna say you can follow me on X, but I'm never on there, so don't worry about it. I do have I do have a couple podcasts. I have one called Good, Weird, Great. No commas, just the 3 words. It's about movies. We talk about different movies every week, and it's a blast. It's not political like my other content. It's just fun. It's just 3 friends talking. The other one is called Devil Fruit Punch, and that one is about the Japanese comic, the manga One Piece. So if you are a huge nerd like me, then maybe you want to check that out.
Yes, I will check that out.
Yeah, that podcast is fun. We're reading the manga, not watching the anime. So if you've ever wondered what that's like, you can check us out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love One Piece. Yeah.
All that's in my link tree on my TikTok too. So if you need help finding it.
All right, and I'll make sure to put their links as well in the description below so that you guys have access to all of that. Look, I just want to thank you both for coming on and having this important discussion. I think what this does is that it also, to some people, I think it's important that we humanize people who are marginalized so that you see that there's not that much difference between us. It's like, and then the difference our differences do not harm them, right? And I think that's what's important. And I just really want to thank you both from, humbly for coming on and having this conversation, because I think it is deeply important. And I actually want to have this conversation again in 6 months if you guys are available.
Yeah, I'd be down, and I appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thank you so much, you both. I will catch you guys on the next one. And I will see you guys, in the DMs.
Hell yeah.
All right. I'll put you guys in the back. All right. Take care. All right, folks. So that was a wonderful conversation. I just wanted to say that I deeply appreciate what the input that they have given here. This is something important. Even if you're not LGBTQ, it does not matter. The things that we were talking about really are pertain to just being a human being in general. And a lot of what we end up griping over, and justifiably so, is because of a system that wants to not only keep us divided, but also a system that wants to keep us looking at each other as, that person's the enemy just because of this difference that does not harm me. And a lot of times what they'll try to use something in order to make it seem like we're harming other people, in order to make it seem like that, we don't deserve liberation. When in reality, if you look at the actual facts on the ground, nobody's being hurt. The people who are actually the most harmful in our society are the owner class that constantly pits us against one another. I think those are the people who are the most dangerous. The people who are the most dangerous are the ones that are trying to get us to go abroad, to fight in these wars, to harm our siblings overseas just for some resources. Those are the people who are the most dangerous. The most dangerous people are the ones that cause us to be exploited day in, day out, so that we are constantly under the fear of being homeless, constantly not having health care, constantly being either hungry or malnourished, because just because you got food in your fridge doesn't mean you're not malnourished, because you can have food in your fridge, but is it the right kind of food that's good for human consumption, right? That actually benefits us. A lot of times we don't talk about that, right? What about, and like I said earlier, how are we treating the people who are coming across our border, right? Because the thing is like, how we treat people who are coming across our border starts off with our foreign policy. But if we're not treating them with respect in their own countries and allowing them to have self-determination, then of course they're going to flee here, right? So I think that's also another important part, is that how we treat our siblings who are to the south of us and to the north of us, and how we treat them. But we're not treating them well, then of course it's going to cause us a lot more heartache when it comes to, the things that they go through. It's a lot. And I think that is important for us to see the humanity within other people consistently. Because on top of it all, once you stop seeing the humanity within a person, it makes it easier for you to justify atrocities against others. There used to be laws against people like me that I couldn't be with anyone, even just in a physically connective way, right? And so that created a hierarchy of, oh, those are the others. Those are people who are not worthy of life. Those are people who are not worthy of liberty. Simply because I decided to show some affection to someone who is biologically similar to me in one aspect. Just because they happen to have the same equipment. But then what does it do? It makes other people think, well, I'm better than them simply because of that. When in reality, we're not better than each other. And I'm gonna be real with you. This is the same thing what they do to divide us by gender. Oh, that's a whole nother conversation, baby. Well, they'll make it seem like just because you have franks and beans, you're somehow on a higher part of the ladder than others. Right? Sorry, I had to use food references, but we're on YouTube. This is a family show. But just because you have franks and beans, that means that you are on a higher part of the ladder than somebody that has a bologna sandwich. It doesn't make sense. Like, just because they're different doesn't mean that one is over the other, right? And this whole gender roles thing. So it's just a means of division to keep us apart. That's all it is. Because everybody's a worker. And if you start to look at people for that and see their humanity, then you start to team up with them and actually fight against the system that exploits you both. And I think that's the point. Let me share this really quick with you guys too. This is what I was talking about in regards to Cuba. This is actually out of the National Institute of Health. So it talks about transsexuals' right to health, a Cuban case study. This came out years ago. It says in 2008, Cuba's Minister of Public Health signed Resolution 126, an act that assured complete coverage of Cubans seeking sexual reassignment surgeries, also known as gender confirmation surgeries, the first of any country in Latin America to do so. 10 years later, Cuba is celebrated as having one of the most open and inclusive LGBTQ public health education programs in the Americas. As illustrated throughout this article, the Cuban state approaches sexuality and sexual identity not as a rights-based issue, but rather as a health-based challenges. Through the case study of Cuba's understanding of transsexuals' right to health, we argue that Cuba has provided an example of how the right to health for all moves towards breaking down barriers of stigma by improving health outcomes for those with transsexual health needs. So basically, they go at it from a health aspect, right? When it comes to those of us, like for instance, do I still need, mental health check? Just like cisgender people need mental health services, I need mental health services too. It's no different, right? What about, when it comes to our health, in many other ways? What about, look, I need to see a dentist. I need to, I need to get my eyes checked. So these are also really important. So yeah, let me share that as well in the chat, just so you guys can see that too. And you guys can share that as well. And to anybody who is, who talks about how they agree with those of us who are LGBTQ or they consider themselves an ally, look, Cuba is literally doing it better than the United States ever could. So take a look at that. Yeah, put that in your pipe and smoke it. So I'm sharing, this is Stride Pensacola, where Indigo is a part of. They also do some great work on the ground. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also give them a look there as well. And hang on. Oh, messages. Okay. And then also I will send you guys the link to John's TikTok as well. Great political analysis all the time from John. So there you go. All right. So if you guys have not, please make sure to give the stream a like, share, and subscribe. That pushes me out into the algorithm. Thank you so very much, as well as subscribe to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com so you guys can know when I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. It's been a long day. It's been a long one, but we're here together, which is always good. With that being said, I would like to give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon, as well as on Coffee, and anybody that sends me any type of mutual aid through PayPal. Thank you so very much to all of you. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this type of work. So I appreciate it deeply from the top and bottom of my heart. And yes, I'm still demonetized. So if you'd like to support the channel, you guys can support via Patreon or PayPal. So thank you so very much. And also, in addition to, and furthermore, if you guys would like to, I'm going to share this as well so that you guys know what you're getting yourselves into. I'm going to share the tiers just so that you guys have an informed opinion. Make an informed decision, as it were. So we have JB members, Solidarity, Comrades, Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, and Mega Jaybefaunters. So thank you so very much for your contributions to the channel as well. And a special thank you to all the new patrons who will be joining in the future as well. So I am going to go to the chat because I know y'all got some things to say. Y'all been talking in the chat. Y'all been speaking. Let me go here. So let me go to the chat. Wait. Okay. And I apologize for not getting on Rumble. I was running late. So anybody that usually watches on Rumble, my apologies. Let's see what y'all saying. Let's see what the people are saying. And I'm going to say my hellos to y'all too. All right. Sean Miller coming in saying, I hope you're okay, JB. Well, thank you very much for that. I was in the hospital earlier this week. It was not a fun time. I'm telling you right now. I went in on Monday and I didn't get out till Wednesday evening because this thing decided to clot. And in the outpatient center that I usually go to, they couldn't take me, so I had to go to the hospital. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. But I had to do what I had to do because I got to stay alive somehow. Miguel coming in saying, peace. Good to see you, Miguel. We have Zombie in the Air coming in saying, JB, Sean, and Miguel, good to see you as well. Jacqueline coming in saying, hi, everyone at Jaybefaunt, Sean, Miguel. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I am. I'm trying my very best. Sean Miller says, yo, salute to all the LGBT peeps. Although I am straight white male, I support anyone in a struggle. Thank you very much for that as well. I was kind of nervous about doing the stream. I'll be honest with you, because you get some people who say, well, that's just identity politics. And I'm like, but they actually do intersect. And a lot of times people do not see how it intersects until you point it out. Serena says, greetings, comrades. I can't stick, but shout out to my fellow queer comrades. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it very, very much as well. Sheila B coming in saying, hey, y'all, sorry I'm late. It's okay. All right. Let's continue. All right. We have Colin coming in saying, yeah, but what have Dems done to stop the genocide of trans people or the genocide of LGBTQIA people in Palestine? Oh, you asked a question. Look, I'm asking the same one. That is a really good question, Colin. And I think people need to start asking that, especially those of us who are queer. Like, all right, so what are you doing for the queer people in Palestine? Boy, they don't want to hear that one. All right. Jacqueline says the division is a distraction and we don't get to talk about the issues of poverty and homelessness. Yeah. But it's also exacerbated by the identities that we hold too, because of that division that's being pushed. Eric Gray coming in saying, hey, everybody, good to see you, Eric. All right. Let me go here. Jenna Colby says, cheapest affordable therapy I can find for uninsured is around $75 to $100. How the F is that affordable? Look, the true way to get affordable is so that everybody can afford it. If everybody can afford it, that means it is essentially free. And people will say, well, nothing is free. Of course, nothing is free. But if you make it free at the point of service, and then we pull our resources together in order to fund it, then guess what? It's available to everybody. So when people talk about, oh, well, nothing is free, right? Nothing is free. But if we pull our resources together to fund it, that's what you call a society. Like, we pull all of our resources to take care of these roads and bridges. Your water that comes out is relatively clean, but you have clean water coming out of your faucet. Why? Because we pull our resources together to pay people to keep it clean. So why can't we do that for housing and further education and healthcare? Dwayne says his country has become a real asshole. Yeah. Gamer for Life says, I'm straight, but I'm listening in. Thank you very much. And I think that's really important for us to be able to get that perspective as well. Jenna says, I cut back considering quitting because of my $30 copay. That is a lot too. A lot of people don't really think about that as well. Thank you. But I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about as well. So I think that's really important too. We're live, folks. Oh, man. But also, let me continue going down here. That's a question I can't really answer, Jacqueline, because I'm not an expert in this arena. Jacqueline asked if trans women can get HRT treatment for free in the U.S. Then that could lead to women who are going through the menopause to get HRT treatment. How does the menopause affect trans men? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. I had somebody trans that was supposed to be on for this, but I don't know what's going on with them. I hope they're okay. But I did have somebody who was trans that was also supposed to be part of this panel. But I think she identifies as she, so was supposed to come on, but unfortunately, she couldn't make it. But hopefully next time we can have those questions answered as well. Gamer says basic human needs need to be free, such as housing, healthcare, etc. Yes. Colin says Domino's founder is a crazy evangelical. They bought thousands of acres in South Carolina to start a Christian militia compound. What? Okay. Interesting. I had no idea about that. Eric Gray says, as a public school teacher myself, it was ridiculous to basically be forced to be silenced by Governor DeSantis as our queer kids are being treated horribly. I'm gonna get in trouble for this. I'm gonna get in trouble. Screw it. If you are a teacher that is LGBTQ and you cannot talk about, you can't mention that you have a partner of the same gender, then anybody who's straight and cis cannot talk about their partner of the opposite gender. You can't. It shouldn't be allowed then. If it's not, if we can't do it, then y'all can't do it. Fair is fair, right? If we're gonna do it, then fine. All right. I can't talk about my boyfriend. All right. If you're a straight dude, you can't talk about your wife. You can't mention you have a wife. You can't put her picture up. You can't let people know that you're married to a woman. Because if you guys think that, oh, well, this is too much over a little kid's head. If it's too far over their heads to be able to think about people who may be in same-sex relationships, then it is too far over their heads to know about people who are in opposite-sex relationships too. It's too far over their heads. They can't think about it. If you want to let kids, all right, fine, let kids be kids. All right, then do not. No, they can't know about heterosexual relationships either. They can't bring up moms and dads. Nope. I know. And some of y'all probably going to yell at me in the chat. Some of y'all going to come into the comments after the stream and be like, JB, that's wrong. Why? Don't get me started, because I will go off. But that thought that, oh, it's good for one but not the other, that thought is how they keep us divided. That's what they do. So that you look down on me and see me as other, and then you see me as the problem, instead of the people that are putting their hand in your pocket and stealing your money and stealing your housing and stealing your health care. That's what the problem is. Look, that drag queen that's reading the book is not a danger. The person that is making sure that those brown people in those other countries that are being bombed, or those chemicals that's being dumped near your neighborhood, the people who are in those Italian suits, those are the danger. That trans person that's selling makeup, at a Bloomingdale's is not your enemy. Get off that. Me holding hands with my boyfriend, how is that hurting you? Be mad at the people who make millions of dollars who are building up these luxury apartments and pushing gentrification. Those are the people you should be mad at. All we want is some health care. That's it. All we want is some housing. All we wanted is to have, our education. You know what I'm saying? I know some people mad at me. I know some people mad at me right now. I don't even want to look on the chat anymore. But it is what it is, man. We have to look. We have to look at it from a logical perspective. Man. Anywho. I gotta get going. And y'all talking about pizza in the chat. Let me get off this because y'all about to make me eat my laptop. Anywho, so but yes, that's some of the things that I wanted to get into. Yeah. This Tuesday, I'll be live once again. Back to my old thing. If you guys like to get my commentary, just find me on Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I will keep you guys posted. I'm supposed to have a guest, I think. But I'll keep you guys posted on that. But I'll be talking about some news stories. And yes, I saw you guys talking about the comments from Dr. West about this guy. I think his name is Alexei or something like that. That was disappointing. But we'll be talking about some news stories. There's a lot going on that I really want to cover. There's some stuff that I actually saw that I want to cover. So we'll get into that too. And yeah, so I just want to say thank you so very much. Let me go to the rock pin really quick too. Make sure I hit the rock before I go. Right before I go. Hang on. Hemp Car says parents feel twerking in front of babies. I don't know anything about that. It's like net hijacked segments of BLM, National Endowment for Democracy. Yeah, I mean these corporations and NGOs, they will hijack, so yeah, of course. They off LGBTQ people in Gaza, or is that propaganda? They off LGBTQ people everywhere. Here in the United States, like Matthew Shepard would like a word. Like it happens here. So yeah. Let me see. So yeah. Vice reported on the LGBTQI being driven out of town. Pot smokers are still in the club. They shouldn't be. Well, it should be legalized, but that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, thank you so much, Hempcar. Appreciate it very much. All right, so I'm gonna head out. And thank you so much to Indigo as well as John. Hopefully we'll have more people joining in for next time. And thank you. You guys have yourself a great one. It's Saturday. It is 8 o'clock. Go enjoy your family. Go enjoy your friends. Go enjoy yourselves. All right. Oh, and by the way, I will be getting into the reading further into The Will of Change, Men, Masculine, and Love by Bell Hooks. So we'll finish reading that. Ooh, starting to drop stuff. Also, I will continue in the reading of Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Devon Price. So we'll get into that as well. A trans author, by the way, if y'all didn't know. So we'll continue reading that. And then Of Water in the Spirit, Ritual, Magic, and the Initiation of in the Life of an African Shaman. We'll continue in the reading of that as well. I cannot wait to get into that. And so, yes. So I will catch you all later. Like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them. Drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny, watch something hilarious, because joy is revolutionary. And recognize that the people who may be different from you, that difference is not harmful to you, and you can unite with them in order to provide a better future for everyone. Just recognize the differences and respect the differences. Even if you don't agree, just respect their difference and work alongside with them in order to liberate everybody. Because in the end, we are all human, and that's what counts. And as to all of you who are humans, forehead kisses, because I know all y'all got foreheads, and they all need kissed. Because I don't discriminate. Every single one of y'all can get a kiss on the forehead. And I'll see you in the next one. Hey, run along. Run along now. I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses and head have a beautiful day.